Imagine a place designed for laughter, joy, and carefree fun. A place where families gather, children scream with excitement, and the sound of rushing water fills the air. A water park, bright, colorful, safe. At least, that's what we're meant to believe. But behind the slides, beneath the pools, and inside the long forgotten maintenance tunnels, there are stories no lifeguard dares to repeat out loud. Whispers of disappearances, shadows moving against the current, and screams echoing long after closing time. Some say the water itself remembers what happened here, and it refuses to let go. Tonight, we're diving headfirst into three true scary stories from inside a water park. These aren't urban legends told to scare kids away from swimming too late. These are chilling accounts, some hidden away in newspaper archives, others passed down by terrified employees who swore never to return. Point one story tells of a lifeguard who kept seeing the same drowning victim night after night, even though the pool was empty. Another recalls a slide that seemed cursed, riders vanishing halfway down, never reaching the pool below. And well, the last is something even darker, something that blurs the line between myth and reality. So grab your towel, hold your breath, and remember this. Once you hear these stories, you might never look at a water park the same way again. Story 1. The drowning that never ended. It was supposed to be just another late summer shift for Daniel, a 22-year-old lifeguard who had been working at Blue Horizons Water Park for nearly 3 years. The season was almost over, the crowds were thinning, and the atmosphere had a sleepy, easygoing feel. On that particular evening, the sky was painted in fading streaks of orange and purple, and the pools reflected the light like molten glass. Daniel had always liked this hour of the day when the children went home. The families packed their bags, and the water park grew quiet. But quiet didn't mean safe. As a lifeguard, he'd been trained to keep scanning the water no matter what, even when nothing seemed to be happening. Even when his own eyelids grew heavy, that's when he saw her at first. It was subtle, a small ripple in the deep pool, a flash of dark hair beneath the surface. Daniel squinted, leaned forward in his tall lifeguard chair, and blew his whistle. No response. The water shimmered, perfectly calm. He told himself it was a trick of the light, maybe just a shadow. But then, unmistakably, he saw a hand, pale, reaching up, fingers clawing against the water. Without hesitation, Daniel dove in. The water was cold, shocking against his skin. He kicked hard, eyes open, scanning the depths. But there was no one. The pool was empty. He broke the surface, gasping, heart pounding. His fellow lifeguard, Emily, jogged over, confused. "What's wrong?" she asked. I I saw someone," Daniel stammered. "A girl. She was drowning." Emily glanced at the still, mirror-like pool and frowned. "There's nobody here. You sure you're not just tired?" Daniel didn't argue, but deep down, he knew what he'd seen. The next night, it happened again. The park had just closed, and Daniel was making his final rounds. He passed by the deep pool, and once again, the water rippled unnaturally. This time, he heard it, a muffled scream, as if someone was trapped beneath the surface. He sprinted toward the pool, eyes wide, and there she was again, a girl, no older than 12, thrashing in the water. He dove in without hesitation. But again, the water was empty. No girl, no splash, just the suffocating silence of chlorinated water pressing against his ears. When he climbed out, shivering, Emily was waiting with crossed arms. "Don't tell me you saw her again," she muttered. Daniel nodded, trembling that that's when Emily finally told him. Years ago, before Daniel had even started working there, a young girl had drowned in that exact pool. It was a busy Saturday, overcrowded, and the lifeguards missed her until it was too late. They pulled her out, but she never breathed again. Ever since then, employees whispered about strange things happening near the water after dark. Some refused to even look at the pool once the sun went down. Daniel didn't want to believe it. He wanted to think there was a logical explanation. But the sightings didn't stop. Night after night, the girl appeared. Sometimes she floated face down. Sometimes she reached for him, her eyes wide and desperate. And once, the most terrifying night of his life, she was right beneath him, staring up through the water with lifeless eyes, her hair swirling like black seaweed. The worst part? She wasn't alone. One night, Daniel swore he saw multiple faces beneath the surface. Children, adults, all reaching, all screaming without sound. The water churned violently, though the air was still. He stumbled back, too afraid to jump in. He knew he couldn't save them. He wasn't even sure they were real. The breaking point came at the end of the season. It was the final closing shift before the park shut down for winter. Daniel stayed late, tasked with locking up the gates. As he passed by the pool one last time, the floodlights flickered, plunging the area into momentary darkness. And in that brief blackout, he heard it, dozens of voices, shrieking, gurgling, begging. When the lights snapped back on, the pool was full, not with water, but with people. Pale, bloated, waterlogged bodies thrashing just beneath the surface, their faces contorted in agony. At the center was the little girl, her mouth opening wide as if to scream. Daniel ran. He didn't even stop to grab his bag. He never returned to Blue Horizons. Some say the girl is still there, reliving her drowning every night. Others believe the pool has become cursed, a magnet for restless souls who died in water. But one thing is certain. If you ever find yourself at a water park long after closing, don't look too long into the deep pool, because sometimes the water looks back. Story 2. The slide that swallowed them. Everyone laughed when the water park advertised its newest attraction, the Cyclone. A monstrous water slide twisting like a giant serpent, promising heart-stopping drops, spiraling turns, and an unforgettable thrill. Teenagers queued for hours to ride it. Families lined up, cameras ready. For a summer, it became the park's crown jewel, but no one noticed the whispers among the staff. The night crew exchanged nervous glances, talking in hushed tones about riders who never seemed to emerge from the cyclone. At first, it was shrugged off as rumors, someone exaggerating, joking. But then it became impossible to ignore. It started with Kevin, a 16-year-old who had ridden the slide 5 times in one day. He disappeared. His friends assumed he was in the bathroom or wandering somewhere else. Hours passed, then the police were called. The slide was shut down temporarily, but no trace of Kevin was found. Not in the pool, not in the maintenance tunnels, not anywhere. The park management tried to spin it as an accident elsewhere, but the staff whispered differently. They remembered the unusual sounds from inside the slide. Low moans, scraping metal, water splashing in a rhythm that didn't match normal flow. And sometimes, at night, when the park was empty, employees swore the slide seemed alive. The surface shimmered unnaturally, and a cold mist oozed from the tunnel entrance. Weeks later, another visitor vanished. A young woman named Lisa, daring to ride the cyclone alone. Witnesses described the moment she entered. She laughed at the twists, raised her arms in joy. Then, halfway through, the slide seemed to go silent. The rushing water quieted unnaturally. Her scream stopped abruptly. When she should have splashed into the pool, there was nothing, just water swirling alone. Maintenance staff inspected the slide the next morning. No blockage, no malfunction. Yet the exit pool was deeper than ever before, the water darker, as if absorbing shadows. Some employees claimed to have entered the slide to check the pipes, only to experience something terrifying, a sensation of being pulled downward by a force stronger than gravity, walls stretching impossibly, and whispers echoing just out of comprehension. They ran out, convinced the slide was no longer a machine but a living trap that IT didn't stop. Over the course of that season, 3 more disappearances occurred, all on the cyclone. The park finally closed it off, but rumors spread quickly online. Some brave or foolish thrill seekers claimed they heard faint screams from inside the sealed entrance. Even after the park had been abandoned for the night, one night, an employee named Mark, tasked with checking the structure for winter maintenance, decided to document the slide. He set up cameras at both ends. When reviewing the footage, he noticed something disturbing. Riders entered normally, but some never exited. Instead, the cameras captured a shadowy vortex forming inside the tube, a swirling blackness that seemed to swallow them whole. One frame showed Kevin, the first missing teenager, faintly smiling, staring at the camera as though trapped in some parallel reality inside the slide. Mark tried to warn management, but they dismissed it as a technical glitch. Determined, he returned the following night alone. Equipped with only a flashlight and a GoPro, he entered the slide from the maintenance hatch. Immediately, the world warped. The slide's interior seemed endless. The water dragged him, faster than physics should allow. Echoing screams filled the narrow tunnel. Suddenly, he glimpsed riders, pale, lifeless, yet aware, pressed against the walls, mouths open in silent terror. Kevin, Lisa, and the others floated past him, their eyes hollow. He realized in horror they were neither dead nor alive, trapped in the slide, existing in a space between dimensions, a pocket of the water park he could never escape. Mark tried to retreat, but the slide seemed to resist. The water churned violently, and for a terrifying moment, he thought he'd be absorbed just like the others. Somehow, by sheer luck or desperation, he crawled out of the maintenance hatch, shivering and gasping. He never returned. The cyclone was eventually dismantled. Yet, some say pieces of it still lie in storage, corroding, whispering in the dark. Employees swear that when the wind hits the metal just right, it sounds like water rushing through an endless tunnel. And if you listen closely, you might hear faint, desperate screams calling your name. Visitors today are warned. Enjoy the slides, but beware the ones that seem too long, too twisting, too dark. Because sometimes a water park ride doesn't just thrill, it traps. Story 3: The darkness beneath most visitors never noticed the maintenance tunnels beneath Blue Horizons Water Park. They were dark, narrow, and off limits, full of pipes, cables, and the echo of dripping water. Staff called it the bowels of the park, but some claimed there was more than plumbing and wiring down there. Something old, something that didn't belong. It began when Sarah, a junior technician, was assigned to inspect the filtration system after a storm had caused a temporary overflow. She hated being alone in the tunnels. The air was heavy, damp, and smelled faintly of decay. As she walked, her flashlight flickered, casting long shadows on the corrugated metal walls. Then she saw it that a figure, hunched, motionless, barely visible at the end of the narrow passage. Sarah froze. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe, yet seemed aware of her presence. Her rational mind told her it was a maintenance dummy or a coworker playing a joke, but the feeling in her chest was wrong. Primal fear, the kind that roots you to the floor. Hello. She called softly, hoping it was someone else. No response. The figure didn't shift as Sarah approached. The air grew colder, and the dripping sounds became louder, more rhythmic, almost like footsteps following her. Then came a low whisper, unintelligible at first, but growing clearer. Join the water forever. The voice was neither male nor female. It wasn't human. It resonated inside her skull, vibrating with a deep, impossible frequency. Sarah turned to run, but the tunnel seemed to stretch infinitely. The exit lights disappeared. The familiar smell of chlorine was replaced by something foul, metallic, and wet. And then she saw them, reflections in the water puddles on the floor. Hundreds of faces, pale, screaming silently, eyes wide, mouths open, limbs twisted. They weren't reflections of people nearby. They were trapped inside the water itself. Panic overtook her. She ran blindly through the corridors, slipping on wet metal, trying to find the stairwell back to the surface. But no matter how far she ran, the dripping whispers followed her, echoing. Join the water forever. Hours seemed to pass, or maybe minutes. Time lost meaning. Finally, she stumbled into a massive, flooded chamber beneath the park. The water was dark, almost black, reflecting no light. And floating in the center, a shadowy mass shifted, a shape vaguely human, yet distorted, arms stretching unnaturally, water moving around it like it had life of its own. The shadow turned toward her. Its eyes, if you could call them that, glowed faintly red. Sarah realized with horror that this was the source of the voices. This thing, this darkness, consumed anyone who wandered too close to the water below. Before she could react, the water surged toward her, pulling at her feet, dragging her closer. She screamed, fighting, kicking, clawing at the metal walls. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the pull stopped. She opened her eyes to see sunlight streaming through the grate above the tunnel. She had somehow been ejected back into the staff hallway near the filtration room. Gasping, soaked, trembling, she ran out of the park and never returned after her story leaked. Employees reported strange occurrences, footsteps echoing in empty halls, shadows flickering in the corner of their vision, and the occasional whispering voice coming from the pools above. Some said the tunnels were haunted. Others claimed the water itself was alive, collecting souls it could claim. Sarah never went back, but she warned anyone who would listen. Never wander near the maintenance tunnels alone. Never peer too deeply into the pools. And never ignore the whispers of the water, because the darkness beneath the water park is patient. It waits, and it will eventually find you. Asterisk, the water park may seem fun and innocent during the day, but once the gates close and the lights dim, the stories remain. Pools that remember tragedy, slides that trap souls, and darkness lurking beneath the very water you splash in. If you enjoyed diving into these chilling tales, make sure to subscribe for more terrifying stories like this video to support the channel. And comment below, which of these water park horrors scared you the most? Remember, the next time you visit a water park after dark, maybe just stay dry.